We already know it's Lane Train. That's my hot board right there.
Lane or bust for Jalen.
Lane or bust, ultimately. Lane or bust.
It gets very murky if you don't get Lane Kiffin right now. And if you don't get him, it's going to be a very tough decision. I would add Urban to my hot board.
How would you feel if the Gators brought in Urban Meyer?
Yeah, let's keep him out of the bars. I think that's the first thing I'd say for sure.
I love Jimbo. He gave us as Seminole fans some of the best moments of our fandom lives, right? I'm glad that we were able to squash our beef. We love you. We miss you. We'll all have 2013, buddy.
I was always a fan of Jimbo. It hurt me when he left to go to Texas A&M. Jimbo would come in here, unfinished business, man. He'd he'd take it back up where he left it.
Why Marcus Freeman is a candidate for the Florida job? It's because of Gator hubris. It's because they think that it's the best job in the country, and they think that people would be willing to leave any program anywhere to take a sniff at this job.
All right, welcome to the show. Big news week. Florida Gators, after a win, fire their head coach, Billy Napier. And there's a lot of speculation going on in Tallahassee with what the administration is going to do with Norvell. So today we got 2 Florida Gator panelists and 2 Florida State panelists. We're going to get in and talk about these coaching situations at Florida and Florida State. So for those that don't know, this is a fan debate show where we bring on fans of either Florida State, Miami, or Florida every Sunday after every college football Saturday to debate the issues ongoing with the programs. And if this show is interesting for you to watch, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us as a new show. We've only been a show for about 2 months now, so it really helps us to be able to continue to put out these shows every week. If you agree or disagree with any of the takes made today, we want to get your opinion too. Please give us your take in the comments below. Before we get into the debate, I want to introduce the panel today. So on the Florida State side, we have Travis and Anthony. Boys, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for
having me, Christian. Yeah, appreciate it, man.
And on the Florida Gators side, we have Jalen and Damian. Boys, welcome to the show.
Go Gators, go Lane.
Yeah, go Gators. Thanks for having me.
And my name is Christian. I'll be moderating today's debate. So, boys, let's jump into it. The Florida Gators fire Billy Napier after a win, beating Mississippi State. So I want to start with you, Damian. At what point because there were a lot of Gator fans last year that were starting to get on the fire Napier train. At what point did you jump on the fire Billy Napier train? And then how did you feel when you heard the news about Billy getting fired, especially coming off of a win?
Man, that's a tough question. So I'll say when I got on the fire train would probably be Miami game 1 last year, where you have a whole season to prepare for that game and you come out and it looks terrible. And so that's why I was like, oh, okay, this guy isn't the guy. And then in terms of firing him after a win, I feel like that was them doing him a favor. Like, hey, this is a beatable opponent. You go out on a win, go out on a good note versus waiting 2 weeks and then you play Georgia. Probably not going to go so well. I would say I was on the train last year of we need to fire this guy. What needs to be done eventually needs to be done immediately. So that's kind of where I was with it.
And Jalen, you were on the Keep Napier train basically the whole time. You saw something that a lot of Gator fans didn't. I would say you were in the minority of Gator fans where you wanted the Gators to keep him. And so I wanted to get your take on how did you feel when you heard the news, especially coming off of a win, and where are you at emotionally now with this?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was the last one off last one on the fire Billy train, that's for sure. Even then, everybody said firing Dan Mullen was a good idea. We won't know until a couple years down the line just to see. But yeah, I mean, it was already kind of like foreshadowing it. We all kind of knew he was going to get fired. We all kind of knew that's where the direction it was going after this season was kind of the letdown it was.
So you're good with it now? You're at a point now where you're okay with the decision to move on? Or you still feel like it was the wrong decision?
No, I mean, it's not necessarily the wrong decision. I mean, I just have to reward the guy. In my mind, I reward the guy that does everything else, even outside of the play calling. I know the play calling is what most people have the gripes over, but at the end of the day, it's football. We got to win games. But I do like the culture that he was building at UF. Everybody had nothing but nice things to say about him and his type of character he is, and that's kind of what we look for. So.
Yeah,
not necessarily like bad about my opinion.
And Jalen, I want to stick with you. The The Florida Gators program is a program where the standard is to compete and win national championships. The program has not reached that standard since Urban Meyer was in town, really since he left in 2010. So the last 15 years, the Gators have been going through this constant coaching turnover cycle of hiring and firing coaches every 3 to 4 years. At some point, the Gator fans want to find stability, someone that can lead them back to that standard of competing for and winning national titles. So if you're Scott Strickland, how would you handle this coaching search moving forward? The names that I'm seeing on hotboards and On3 and 247 are Lane Kiffin, Marcus Freeman, Eli Drinkowitz, James Franklin, Jed Fish, Jeff Brom, Rhett Lashley, Alex Golish, Fran Brown, Brent Key, Glenn Schumann, and Urban Meyer. Got to throw his name in that hat too. But if you're in Scott Strickland's shoes, how are you approaching this? Who's on your hot board? Who's on your cold board?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Scott Strickland is, and I know like when he first hired Billy and he was doing the search for those head coaches, they talked about like, hey, giving the new head coach time. So I think that he's gonna probably go into it with the same mentality, the same. Billy just wasn't the X's and O's guys when it came down to it, and that's kind of like where his flaw was. Everything else, I think he was perfect for UF. It's just the X's and O's. So I think that Strickland will go in with the same kind of thought process, but I think he's going to want to make a bigger splash hire. He's going to want to keep the boosters happy, want to keep the fan base happy. So I think he's going to go for more of a personality hire, because that's also another con that Billy had, was that a lot of people didn't rock with his personality. And then on the coaches, we already know it's Lane Train. That's my hot board right there. Somebody else that I did add to my hot board that I didn't think was available, Jeff Brom. I actually think he'll do pretty well. I like the way he's got Louisville looking. Even the past couple of years, I thought that he's pretty good coach. Everybody else, I'm not big on Drinkowitz, not big on Franklin. A lot of those guys spoil big games. If you're coming to Florida, you have to be able to win the big games. And a lot of these guys show that they can't do that. So I probably wouldn't. Honestly, a lot of these guys are on my cold board. Jeff Fish, I don't care that he's a UF grad. Unfortunately, Rhett Lashley, we saw what happened yesterday. They were pretty trash. And then anybody else, we'd be in the same position as Billy. If not, we'd have a worse recruiter. So not really feeling any of those guys. It's really
Lane or bust for Jalen.
Lane or bust, ultimately. Lane or bust.
Damien, want to get your take. Obviously, the Gators are wanting to get back to that standard. If you're in Scott Strickland's shoes, how are you going to approach the coaching search? I know you've had concerns about how the UAA and Strickland have handled things in the past. By the way, they're allowing him to make his third head coaching hire of football, which is almost unheard of for athletic directors. I think because they won the basketball national championship, they gave him that extension. But had he not gotten that, he probably would have been fired. They probably would have a new AD at this point. So anyways, you're in Scott's shoes. This is your last hurrah, your last chance to make a good hire. How are you going to approach the search? And then some of those names that we talked about, who are going to be on your hot board and cold board?
Yeah, I mean, I think outside of Todd Golden, I can't really say Scott Strickland has made any good hire. So like even the Golden, I was like apprehensive about that until I found out more about the guy, and I was like, okay, I really like this hire. But I would say like approaching it, I think what's going to happen is like you're going to go all in on Lane, make him tell you no. That's very, very risky. So like, because then at that point, Jimmy Sexton represents pretty much everybody in college football. So he know how high you're willing to go on contract. And so then you may lock yourself into like a B option, C option around a similar contract that you really don't want to pay. So like it's a delicate way you got to approach it, I would say. But I mean, for me in terms of hot board, like I would say where I'm hot on, I'm like, okay, Lane for sure. Marcus Freeman, I don't think that's like possible right now. Brom, I would be hot on him. Not so sure there. I would add Urban to my hot board. Unpopular, but
Okay.
I mean, James Franklin, like in today's climate, I mean, I think James Franklin, you need somebody that can start the job in December. If Ole Miss makes the playoffs, you're in a very tough position of like pushing this situation to January, and you may not get Lane Kiffin. At that point, you're pretty much punting on the 2026 season. So I'm not opposed to James Franklin. What I would say cold board, it would be Jed Fish, Brent Key, Lashley, Schumann, Brown, and Golesh. Like, not that I don't think they can be successful coaches. I just think right now where we're at as a program, those would be very risky hires where you're in a similar spot in 3 to 4 years. And so really it's just like we didn't have to hire Billy Napier. That's who Scott Strickland went after and hired. There were other coaches that wanted the job. And so, you come off of Urban Meyer, Jeremy Foley, AD at the time, you hire Will Muschamp. Hottest name, he's a coordinator, but you go from a championship caliber coach to hiring a defensive coordinator that's never coached before. You hire McElwain, a G5 hire. You hire Mullen, a low-tier P5 hire at the time, and then you go and you get Billy Napier, a G5 hire. I want a power forward head coach that has proven a track record of success. That's what I'm looking for this time around. Because you got to stabilize the program.
Yeah.
Well, Mullen was a stabilizer, though. He was supposed to be the stabilizer because he was like part of the championship offensive coordinator as part of the championship.
He wasn't the first option. We fell into Mullen because he was about to take the Tennessee job, and we missed on Chip Kelly. The Scott Frost situation was kind of what it was, and I mean,
we were
got
looking
the
at
best of the bunch that go around in the cycle, but Mullen couldn't sustain it because Mullen cared more about people saying I'm winning with lesser players than he cared about winning.
Facts.
He cared more about everybody saying this guy is such a good coach that he can win with 3 stars, low tier 4 stars. And then when it came time to play his own guys, it was the worst team he had.
Yeah, I do want to say that with the next head coach punting on the 2025-2026 season or 2026 season, I don't think that's true. I think our talent is like loaded enough to where you can come in and pretty much really make an immediate impact. Especially with the type of roster we have right now. Like, you don't really need to recruit crazy this cycle. Like, you actually get a cycle to play with talented players that are 4 and 5 stars. So, like, Billy left.
It's not fair.
Out of
It's
all the
not a
coaches that
Bear
we've
Cup
had,
board.
Billy has left the next head coach in the best position.
I would say he didn't leave a Bear Cup board, which is good. So, I mean, at this point, depending on
full fridge.
What was that? I wouldn't say full fridge. This is some bread in there on the trenches. But come down.
Got to retain Dallas Wilson. Damian, really quick before I get these FSU panelists' take on the UF search. You mentioned Urban Meyer. I've talked to different Gator fans. Some are like all about it. Like, this is the guy we need to go in on. Some are like, please keep him the hell away from UF. Because I think when you came on originally, I think you were kind of
I was like,
about.
Nah, I don't want to go that route. I would say I'll pivot it in the sense of if you need a short-term solution for the next 2 to 3 years while you guys get this stuff together in the UAA, that's like a fail-safe kind of option is kind of how I view it, because it gets very murky if you don't get Lane Kiffin right now. And like it seems to be, and it's very rare, I've kind of seen this sentiment from Gator writers where they're like, hey, like, this is the guy they're going for. Like, and it could be the biggest smoke screen ever, but like all signs are pointing to like this is who they want. If you don't get him, it's going to be a very tough decision. So it's like, do you rush into giving somebody that you don't really want $80 million? Or do you say, hey, Urban, can you kind of piecemeal this stuff together for the next 2 to 3 years while we figure this out? At that time, you get Lashley, Fish, Key, all these guys more time to get more experience to be a digestible hire for your fan base. It's not my top option. I would say like I'm definitely Lane, Franklin, and then from there, like I would say like Drink/Urban on that same tier right now. But it's not a lot of options right now this cycle, especially if LSU comes open. I'm not worried about that necessarily with Lane, but that is drive the price up regardless of who you hire.
Yeah. I want to go to you, Trav, on this. So Damian brings up Urban Meyer, and obviously we remember what Urban Meyer did for the Gator program. How would you feel if the Gators did hire Urban Meyer, considering the guy, I think he has the highest winning percentage in the history of college football. I think it's like 90% winning percentage. He obviously failed miserably in the NFL, but he's always been known as a college guy. How would you feel if the Gators went out and brought in Urban Meyer at this point, Travis?
Yeah, let's keep him out of the bars. I think that's the first the first thing I say for sure. But, I mean, he's a great football mind. He's a huge name. He'd do some great things recruiting wise as well. So I think it wouldn't be something if I was a UF fan that I'd be necessarily upset about. I think he's probably learned his lesson about some of the things that are the controllables, how he handles himself as an ambassador for the program. But I think he would be a good candidate for the job, and he could do some good things.
And what's your quick take on Urban? And then I want to get your guys' worry meters on these candidates.
On Urban, it's tough, dude, because it's like, is it the boogeyman Urban from the late 2000s or mid to late 2000s, or is it the Urban that it is now? Like, what's his motivation? Like, how bad does he actually want to do it? It doesn't seem like he's really seeking out coaching opportunities at the time. He's not doing the Jimbo who's out here talking about, I'm ready. If my phone starts ringing, I'm ready. Like, you don't hear Urban doing this stuff, right? And the thing is that college football is such a time commitment now, with the way that you constantly have to recruit not only your new players, but the players that are actively on your roster. If you're not fully bought in, I don't think it matters, right?
That's a
So
good
like
point.
that's really what it comes down to is if they were to get Urban, what's the Urban that shows up, right? That's the real question.
All right, so I want to get you and Trav's 1 to 10 worry meter on these candidates. So 10 would be most worried. So we'll start with Urban. Travis, what's your worry meter on Urban?
Yeah, Urban. I'd give him probably an 8. But if we're talking about, but that's because like I'm a little bit
That's
worried
pretty
about what's
worried.
going on.
That's pretty
I
worried.
think Florida. I really believe Florida is going to do something good with this hire. And I think Lane is the guy. I think everybody's pretty locked in on. He'd be obviously a 10 for me. I just think Lane could come in and completely take this program back to a national championship, contending program.
Yeah, and what are your worry meters on Lane and Urban?
Urban, I would say a 6 because like I said, it's 50-50 of which guy's going to show up. So instead of going with a 5 at 50-50, I'm going to give him +1 because if he does show up, that's a problem. So that's why I would say 6. Lane, I would say a solid 8 because of kind of what Jalen was saying, right? Like this is not an empty cupboard. I wouldn't say it's a full fridge like he does, but it's definitely not an empty cupboard. And the thing that we know about Lane is he can take those pieces that are already there. He's a really good portal recruiter, so he can supplement some missing pieces from the portal. And he's a great offensive mind, right? So you've got some pieces, you bring in some supplements, and you add in his wrinkles, his offense. And I think you've got a team that's really scary almost immediately. So I would say at least an 8 for Lane if he were to go to Florida.
All
And
right,
to bring in the trenches.
Trav and Anthony, want to get your worry meter on James Franklin and Jeff Brom, 1 to 10.
Yeah,
I'd say a 7 for Franklin. I don't know that Franklin's the guy for them. He's more of like a program builder in my mind, like raising the floor type of guy. And I think that their floor is like in a good enough place that I just don't know that he works there. Jeff Brom, if he were to go there, I'd be worried. I don't think he's going to leave Louisville. Like I was listening to some radio shows and they were saying that he doesn't really have interest in the Florida job, which thank God, because I think he's proven himself to be like one of the best minds in college football. The way that he gets those Louisville teams just schematically, the way that he schemes up advantages week to week is amazing, man. So if you give him the talent in the recruiting base that's there in Florida, I mean, it's a big problem. So I hope that he loves his alma mater and he stays there for as long as he wants.
Yeah, Brom did beat Ohio State at Purdue, blew him out, which I don't think ever happened before. And then that win over Miami, obviously out-talented, great coaching, game day coaching performance by him. Trav, I want to get your take.
Yeah, so for Brom, he's proved that he's a great coach to this point. My concern, for the Florida fans and that being the hire is how does he transition into the SEC? But he's certainly an excellent schemer. He knows what he's doing. He's putting together an organized program. He's I think formed a good culture within that program while he's been there. And then for Franklin, I'd say probably a 7. With Brom, I'd say an 8. An 8.
Okay. And then Damien, I know you got to jump. Want to get if you have any last takes on UF's coaching search.
Yeah, man. So I would
jump.
say, like, in regards to Urban, that was a great point by Anthony about, like, how committed is he. But one thing I would say the difference between him and, say, what we just had is Urban hates to lose. I would say Napier built a culture of being close, but it's also a culture of compete as hard as you can, but if you lose, it's okay. So like that's kind of the sense that I got is like, okay, compete as hard as you can, but if you lose, hey, we're just gonna try again next week. And I would say, like, from what I'm hearing, I'm not sure that Florida could compete financially with Louisville right now with some of the things I'm hearing, and that Brown really wants to be there. So again, I would just say, like, on my parting kind of way out, I would say, like, if you don't get Lane, like, take a real deep look at James Franklin. You can do a lot worse on hires than James Franklin, in my opinion. And we just saw 4 in a row with Florida. So I just need somebody that consistently win 8 to 10 games. You're doing that at Florida, you have a chance for the playoffs and a 12-team playoff, especially if it moves to 16 teams. It's like, I just need somebody that can beat USF consistently. I need somebody that can beat Kentucky consistently. It's like that. That's kind of what I'm looking for now. I'm not looking for a 12-0 coach. I'm looking for somebody that can get 9, 10 wins, and you have a chance at the playoffs every year. And that's kind of just.
Yeah, and last thing, Damien. So your order of operations or your order of who you go to first and next, if they say no, so would be Lane number 1. Would it be Franklin 2, Brom 3, Meyer 4?
I would
Is that
say,
kind of
yeah,
like the order?
Lane 1, Franklin 2, 3 gets kind of tricky. 3 is kind of like I got 3 coaches all in the same boat there, and that would be Urban, Drinkwitz, which I'm not very high on, and then Brom. Like if you after those 5, it gets very, very murky for me.
You're not really down with the Golishes of the world.
No, thank you. I've been there, done that. I don't want to see that again.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was a really bad loss. I think they were up by 18 points in the second half, and they just completely collapsed yesterday versus Memphis. But I know you got to jump, Damien, so appreciate you coming on, and hope you have a good rest of the day.
You guys take care. Have a good rest of your day.
Want to welcome to the show Trace as the 3rd UF panelist for the show today, and we're going to be getting his take on the UF coaching search and the FSU coaching situation as well. Wanted to go to you, Travis, you had a question about Marcus Freeman.
Why was he thrown into the conversation of potential candidates for the Florida hire after what he's done with Notre Dame? What would make anybody think that he could be willing to leave his current position?
I think a lot of that was like kind of more so like fake smoke. Really, is really more so like, hey, just putting like the most like best guy in like an available position. I think. Like, I didn't think that Marcus Freeman was going to be our top choice. Apparently, Strickland likes him, so I think that's kind of also where a little bit of smoke came from. But they have 2 losses. Yeah, that's more than Notre Dame usually has, but I don't think that he's going anywhere. I don't think that Marcus Freeman was expecting to leave. I don't think that he was going to get fired or there was any kind of conversations about that.
Yeah.
I think they got their guy, and I think Marcus Freeman is it. His name just kind of came up.
And Trace, I want to get your take. I know I'd sent the list of coaching candidates for the Gator job. Who, if you're in Scott Strickland's shoes, who's going to be on your hot board and who's going to be on your cold board right now?
Yeah, based on the names that we talked about, I think the number 1 guy on pretty much every Gator fan's list is Lane Kiffin. I feel like at this point, the names after him feel like a little bit of a drop off. But Lane Kiffin, it seems like the fan base is pretty united and really wants this guy as our coach. And it seems like it'd be a good fit. But if he keeps doing well at Ole Miss, there could be a chance where he sticks there. Some other names, there's Marcus Freeman thrown around, but I believe he went on an interview and already said no. There's throwing Jeff Brom, Eli Drinkwitz. Those are some of the main names I see being thrown around for Florida.
So who would be your, top 3, 4, 5 in order candidates that you would go to if you were Scott Strickland?
I think for me, it's Lane Kiffin at 1.
In order, yeah.
In order. 2, and it's pretty unrealistic, I would want Lincoln Riley. I just don't feel like maybe he's a great fit out in USC, but buyout would be huge. 3, if possible, Freeman.
Even with the no defense with Lincoln Riley?
Yeah. I mean, Florida is a team that we thrive when we have a good offense and, we have a Heisman quarterback. And you're talking about a guy who alone has as many Heisman quarterbacks as we have had in history. I think the defense.
The whisperer.
Exactly. So I would say Lincoln, Marcus Freeman, but that just doesn't seem realistic. It's like Jalen said, it seems like it was fake smoke. I like Jeff Brom. I think he is a Louisville alumni, so it would be really tough for him to get him to leave Louisville. And 5 is really tough. I mean, Drinkwitz is in there. A lot of the fan base doesn't like him. They don't like his personality. They just kind of, he rubs people the wrong way. But I do think the guy's a good coach. And I kind of like that he was a guy that did give up the play calling when fans were giving him, a hard time that the play calling sucked. And that's ultimately why right now we have no head coach. This guy wouldn't give up the play calling. So that'd be my top 5.
What are your quick thoughts on James Franklin and Urban Meyer?
I mean, Urban, I kind of think is like a pipe dream. I kind of feel like the guy's the man, and everywhere he's gone, he's won except Jacksonville. So I don't know how he would be doing in college with this new era of NIL. And then James Franklin would be not the worst hire, but not the most exciting hire either. At least the guy is a proven coach, but he had a really hard time in the Big Ten against ranked teams. And you're talking now about talking in the SEC where you're going to play way more ranked teams every year. So, he has some qualities to him that are convincing, but also a lot of red flags if you listen to what Penn State had to say about him.
Can I give a Florida State answer to Travis's question about why Marcus Freeman is a candidate for the Florida job? It's because of Gator hubris. It's because they think that it's the best job in the country, and they think that people would be willing to leave any program anywhere to take a sniff at this job. They think that Marcus Freeman, right, with an independent team with like a cakewalk into the playoff every year, as long as things don't go catastrophically wrong, with all the money in the world, would leave that situation to come coach in Gainesville, Florida. So I don't know if it's for smoke. I don't know if it's for like to try to boost up their self-confidence or something. But I would say the simple answer for Marcus Freeman being on those boards is Gator hubris.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Anthony.
So, Anthony,
Best
you
said
don't
that.
think the Gator job is the same job it was 20 years ago when Urban Meyer walked in the door?
No. That's so, dude, unfortunately, right? Like the big three, all three of us, if we're being realistic, I don't think any one of us can say that the other programs aren't an awesome job with the buy-in that comes from a support standpoint. Miami, Florida, Florida State, those are always going to be some of the top jobs in the country. It is a great job. But so is Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame's a great job too. And that's what I mean. I do think that there are coaches that would be willing to jump at the opportunity to coach the University of Florida, just not ones that are coaching other major programs like Notre Dame also. Like that's what I mean.
It's not hubris, it's a standard.
All right, so Anthony, I want to stick with you, switching over to FSU's situation. The athletic director, Michael Offord, came out with a statement this week, and first few sentences were fluff, but really the last two sentences said everything, and I'll just read them. So he said, as we continue to move forward this season, our comprehensive assessment of the football program will be completed at season's end. Meanwhile, we are fully committed to helping Coach Norvell and the 2025 Seminoles strongly rebound in the coming weeks. Is this the worst statement ever made by an athletic director of all time?
Has to be from a multitude of standpoints, right? Because and I want to say something. You said that the beginning part was fluff, and I disagree, because here's the first sentence, right? Florida State football benefits from unmatched, passionate support from the entire FSU family, and the commitment to our football program is unwavering. So it says, acknowledge the support that our fan base, alumni, and boosters provide. And then I'm going to turn around and spit in the face of those same people by talking about the standard that we have and how I know this guy's not meeting it, but it's okay. So really what Michael Offord is allowing, he's allowing the continual erosion of our standard that this program was built on. The Florida State standard has been weakened and weakened and weakened over Mike Norvell's tenure at Florida State, okay? So I hate to say this, I am jealous of Florida fans right now because their administrators, their boosters had the balls to look at their coaching situation and say, this isn't right, and we're going to pull the plug now. We're going to be one of the first people to market. We're going to have our ducks in a row, and we're going to do everything we can to get this back in order, okay? And we say, look, we know this ain't it, but we'll figure it out at the end of the season. So not only is it an insult to the fans, alumni, and boosters that you rely on, because college football is unlike any other sport where we, the fans, are really responsible for funding the organization, right? So not only does it piss those people off and kind of spit in our face, you turned the bullseye on yourself, man. Nobody was mad at Michael Offord before, right? And no one's mad at Mike Norvell. We just know he's not it. No one's mad at the guy. No one thinks he's losing games on purpose. He's just not the guy for the job. But now what you've done is you've riled up this fan base, and you are now the main target. So when all we were concerned about was Mike Norvell and him not being here anymore, now we want Michael Offord nowhere near our program. So not only does it fail to do anything for the fans, it leaves your program and fans in limbo, and it turned the bullseye on the person making the statement. So that's why I agree with you. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say this is probably the worst vote of confidence statement that an AD has ever put out into the ether, because it backfired on him in so many ways.
Yeah, I agree 1000%, Anthony. I think that it's athletic director malpractice on so many levels. Following the sport of college football the last 20, 25 years, you see athletic directors come out with statements. It's usually only three options. It's either the option one, which is he's fired. I'm coming out to let the fan base know he's fired. Option two is like what Strickland did with Napier. I'm coming out to let the fan base know that Billy Napier will be back next season. So he's definitely going to be here for another full year. Option three is to say nothing at all, which I think would have been the best option in this scenario. And then option four is, which I've never heard of this, but it's we're going to give a judgment at the end of the year on if this guy's the guy. And it puts him in limbo because he's trying to sign a recruiting class 4 days after the season ends. And not only that, if you fire him, you're only given if you fire him at the end of the season, that's athletic director malpractice, because you're only giving yourself 4 days to fill the slot before signing day. So you're screwing over the high school recruiting class. So on so many levels, he screwed the program from both angles. If you do have to bring him back, if you can't afford the buyout, Mike's screwed, because he's now other coaches are going to be saying, if you sign with him this year, what makes you think Mike Norvell's going to be with you next year if they have to make a judgment at the end of the year? Not only recruits, transfers, coaching staff, it puts everyone in limbo. Potential transfers that want to come in, they're like, is this guy going to be around? So you really box yourself in on if you bring Mike back or if you fire Mike, that at the end of the year, you don't really have much time. So I think in this new era of college football, if you're going to fire someone, you got to do what the Gators did and what these other schools have done. Penn State, fire them in the middle of the year. Give yourself time to do a coaching search. I want to get your take on the Michael Alford statement. How did you feel when it came out? And what do you think it's also like one of the worst statements ever by an athletic director?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so contradictory what he was saying. He's tiptoeing in both lanes, and it's bringing even more uncertainty to the program. Recruits that are currently committed are probably looking at what this guy was saying, and they're like, I don't want any part of this dysfunction. Like it hurts as a fan. Like you said, the boosters, the people that are pouring their heart and soul into this program, even some of these coaches that are going to still be around. It's just horrible, and I think it could potentially set us back a lot farther, the way that he's approached this entire situation. And I think he needs to go ahead and start looking at himself, I think, in the mirror a little bit here, and figuring out how he's going to change his approach.
Yeah. And I want to get your take too, Trav, on, let's say the boosters come up with the money, and let's just say they do figure out a way to fire Norvell and do a coaching search this year, hypothetically, for debate's sake. It doesn't look like that's going to happen at this point, but for debate's sake, if that were to happen, who are some guys that you would look at for FSU?
I think James Franklin, that I think is realistic, that could happen. I definitely don't, and I've seen Deion's name thrown around. I just think it's ridiculous to think that anybody thinks that's the correct move at this point. Also, like, he's got serious health issues right now.
Yeah.
Seems like he can't even finish the season right now at Colorado, from what I'm hearing.
On Deion, just to note, last night it was a late game. I happened to be up late because I was at Halloween Horror Nights, but I was tracking it. They were down 43-0 at halftime versus Utah. Colorado was. At halftime, the total yards were 399 Utah, -9 yards for Colorado at halftime. And they end up losing like 58-6 or something.
So surprising with all that effort he makes in recruiting. Really surprising for me.
I mean, I don't even know how that's possible to have -9 yards at halftime. He did some good when he had his sons there, and Travis Hunter was there. It's polarizing. It's Deion, and so it brings attention to the program. But I don't think he's an X's and O's guys like that, and he can really take a college program to the promised land. I just don't see it.
Anthony, I want to get your take on the who's on your hot board. If hypothetically FSU were to be able to figure out a way to fire Mike, who would be your order of operations candidates for the job?
Sure. So I will say that unfortunately I have a growing fear that we're going to be having this conversation next season. not at the end of this one. I know a lot of us here are like message board members and things like that. And the Sunday after the Stanford game, when all of that stuff was coming to a boil, I commented on one of the threads and I was like, does anybody else, like, does this not feel real to anybody? Because I'm surprised that we're going to have the balls here to make this move, right? Because it really seemed like it was going to happen. And then obviously Monday comes and surprise, surprise, we didn't do it. I feel like Alford and them are setting us up and we're going to be doing this and dealing with this for one more year. But in your pie in the sky situation where we're talking about coaches, it's weird for me to say this because I've spent the last 10 years thinking this guy was a joke for his inability to win a game that really matters. But I would take James Franklin in a heartbeat, because I think he would run through the ACC. I really do. The way that he would raise our floor as a program, I think he would get us to a point where we're legitimately competing for ACC championships every single year. And I think that is the standard of Florida State, right? Like, obviously making pushes to the national championship. But with today's day and age in college football, to expect to be in the national championship every year is not realistic. But to say that we shouldn't fight for an ACC title and a shot at the playoff every year, that is our standard. That is what we should do. And James Franklin, yeah, he doesn't win those big ones, but other than this year, he doesn't really lose games he's not supposed to lose either, which is what Mike Norvell has based his coaching career on, is losing the games he shouldn't lose. James Franklin really doesn't do that. So I don't see us struggling with Pitt and Virginia and NC State, any of these guys. Like, I don't see that being a problem anymore. So I would take James Franklin because he's proven himself to be a floor raiser, a great evaluator of talent, and a great developer. And I would love James Franklin. He would be number one choice for me, for sure. Better recruiting bed, and now he can bring in some of those Northeast ties that he established when he was in Penn State. That's a bed that can be opened up for us. So
Yeah.
I think James Franklin would be a great addition here, and he'd be my main target for sure.
Yeah, my issue with James Franklin is, I think for Florida State, if you're going to change coaches, you should be looking at hiring for ceiling, someone that can reach the ceiling of what you want the program to reach, of winning an ACC title, making the playoffs, compete and win a national title. And I just don't see James Franklin reaching that ceiling. I see him being a guy where he can make the playoffs and then lose like he did last year in one of the first couple rounds or so. But I don't see him as a guy that can, as a game day coach, what he's done in his career to be able to get you over that hump to win a national title. And for Florida State's administration, I think it would be better to bet, and for UF's administration too, bet on a guy that has the possibility of reaching that ceiling of winning a national title. And if they don't have that, if the ceiling's lower, if it's a high floor guy, I don't think that that's what the program should be doing.
I want to hear your thoughts. When we talked about the Gators, we talked about Urban Meyer coming back. And obviously, if you're a Florida State fan and you're paying attention, Jimbo's lurking. He's been in tally. He's crying on the ACC huddle set, saying he misses us, that he never wanted to leave. And I want to know, like, how would you feel as Florida State fans if Jimbo was the guy? Like, is that something you'd be open to? How would you feel if Jimbo was part of our coaching search? Do you think he's even worth being one of the names?
Trav, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jimbo would come in here unfinished business, man. He'd kind of he'd take it back up where he left it. Jimbo's an incredible recruiter. People throughout the whole organization, they kind of gravitate towards him. They like the man he is. I think that he's a good leader. And he's a good football coach. I don't know how that would end up working out financially speaking, like the money we'd be paying to dump Norvell, and then the contract that this guy Jimbo would be probably asking
Dude,
for.
He's got no offset language with Texas A&M and no mitigation either. So he doesn't have to look for a new job, and there's no offset. That guy could take a $3 a year salary, bro.
Okay, yes. And if it were to happen and it could be at a reasonable salary, I mean, I would love it. I'd be super excited about it. I was always a fan of Jimbo. It hurt me when he left to go to Texas A&M. Yeah, I'd be pumped, and a lot, like you said, for the same reasons. With the Urban Meyer situation, he could come in and recruits have seen that he's done it with this program before. And it could be something that potentially could spark the whole thing again. You would hope.
So my take would be, I think Jimbo would be total and complete disaster of a hire for FSU. And here's why. Basically, when Jimbo was at his peak, it was a different era of college football, different recruiting era, and different offensive era, offensive philosophy. We've seen since his days at Florida State, his offense does not do well in this new college football world. He had all the money in the world to buy all the best players. He had the number one best recruiting class of all time at A&M, top 5, top 3 recruiting classes consistently, getting the best players, and he just couldn't make it work offensively. He built it into a 6-6 program, which you shouldn't do when you can buy any players. At Florida State, you're not going to have the same money you do to be able to buy players at A&M. So his offense is just outdated, in my opinion. There's a reason that he hasn't been hired in the last 2 full years. Last thing I'll mention is if you take what Jimbo did away from what he did at Florida State, should Florida State go hire a guy that a school paid $76 million, the biggest buyout in history, to just not coach? There must have been some serious catastrophic issues with him there. So I think Jimbo was a great coach during that era for Florida State, but I think in this new era, I don't think it would translate well. I think he could do good as a recruiting manager or like a GM. He identifies talent well, he evaluates talent well, but being the guy in charge on the sideline, overseeing the offense, I think it would be a complete disaster, my opinion. Anthony, I want to get your take on Jimbo.
Yeah, I want no parts of Jimbo being our head coach again. I love Jimbo. He gave us as Seminole fans some of the best moments of our fandom lives, right? And I'm glad that we were able to squash our beef, rekindle the flame a little bit. Like, hey, you're here in Tally, you're crying on the ACC huddle. We love you, we miss you, cool. We'll all have 2013, buddy. But I agree with you for all the failures you pointed out at Texas A&M. But aside from that, dude, he says he never wanted to leave Florida State, right? That basically the admin forced him out. He flirted with LSU. He flirted with LSU again. Then he flirts with Texas A&M, and he leaves us, right? Sure, call me a scorned lover, call me whatever you want, but you don't walk away from us and then get to come back and be the head coach of our great university. I'm sorry. You want to be part of the program, you want to be a recruiting coordinator, you want to be a GM, help us acquire and identify talent. I love it because the guy's got an eye for talent, right? And he's great with that, and he knows what it means to recruit at the highest level. But as far as being the head coach at Florida State, I think that ship has sailed with Jimbo Fisher, and I do not want to see a repeat of that at all.
I just think universities happen to want to go back to these old coaches because we remember the good times. But for Urban and Jimbo, I think both of them would be disastrous. I think that people don't understand that it's an entirely new college football realm, and that matters. That's why the coaches we're seeing today aren't successful the way they are, because they need time and it's a lot of stuff to do. I think James Franklin is probably Florida State's best chance at coming back to national relevance and competing, especially if Florida gets lean and we can have those duels in the desert of Florida State. I think we're trying to get back to that time where those have playoff implications and stuff like that. I think James Franklin will probably be the way to go. But with Jimbo, word meter would probably be at a 6 or 5. James Franklin, word meter would be at an 8 or a 9 easily.
Trace, what about you for Jimbo and Franklin at FSU? And I actually want to throw in Dan Mullen because I think Dan. I know you guys are. I know you guys. I know you guys don't like Dan Mullen. You fired him. You got tired of him. You're happy when he left. But I think as far as scheming up offense, he's the best in the business at that. You have the NIL era
on the Dan Mullen thing
where you can buy players and stuff. I think it was a mistake for the Gators to fire Dan Mullen. It's probably a very unpopular take, but that's just my take. I think he did way better than Billy Napier. Billy Napier won 49% of his games. Dan Mullen won 70% of his games. And if you look at the recruiting, Dan Mullen averaged a higher recruiting class than Billy Napier. They always talk about Billy Napier, the recruiter. So Trace, I know it's a lot, but just did the Gators make a mistake with firing Mullen? And then what would be your worry meter if he were to go to FSU, him and Franklin?
I definitely think that although he was way better than Napier, I do think it was right for Dan Mullen to get fired. I think if he would have just went and got rid of Todd Grantham after that year with the Marco Wilson shoe throw, I think that he would have bought some extra time. But I think the fact that you kept Grantham when the fan base was absolutely fed up with him, and then you followed it up the next year and just kind of he kind of built the grave for himself. Where at first when fans wanted him fired, I go, how do you want this guy fired? He's been absolutely fantastic the first 3 years. But then as the season went on, he just kind of he needed to go. It just got to be a really toxic environment. There were a lot of things going on behind the scenes that were not good for the culture, and he needed to go. But in the sense, if it was between keeping him in Napier, I think obviously you could have made a case to keep Mullen. And then going on to the FSU job, I don't think that the worry meter would be low for Jimbo Fisher. I think just kind of taking a step back, I think that the problem is that FSU, in going to that athletic director statement, I think that they're going to have a really hard time getting the money to get rid of Mike Norvell and go on to hire a good coach. And that could be where potentially, unless the boosters really start putting a lot of money into the program, he potentially could stay another year. I don't think Jimbo Fisher would be the answer. I think you'd get more of what you got at the latter time of his career with DeAndre Francois. James Franklin, I think, would be a really good hire for them. Also, because if they could manage a buyout for Norvell, you don't have to have a buyout for this guy because he's fired. So that could be a really good hire for them. I don't think that some of these other names we're thinking about might be there next year if they did have to hold on into another year. A guy like a guy like Rhett Lashley could be a really good coach. I think that Mullen would be interesting just because it really would make the rivalry pretty great. And I feel like he would definitely be doing it to kind of stick it to Gator fans if he would take a job like that. But I also kind of think this guy doesn't really like to recruit. And I kind of feel like he's happy at a place like Las Vegas is where he's at, right? Where he doesn't have to recruit hard. And he can just really scheme. He's such a great offensive coordinator. He can just have offensive mastermind and win himself games that way and not have to have all the pressure on him. So I think Franklin would be a really good hire, but I ultimately think that they may end up keeping Norvell if they can't get the money to get rid of him, because he's got a ton of money for his buyout. What's it, like $100 million or something?
Yeah,
something crazy.
It would be the second biggest buyout of all time if they were to buy out Mike Norvell. Under Jimbo. Jimbo was $76 million. Mike would be like $55 million,
it's like
something like
60
that.
or something right now.
60.
Yeah, 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
60 million.
I know Anthony. Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know Anthony definitely doesn't want to see Norvell go into next season. I wouldn't be devastated by that. I want to see how he finishes this season. Look, he's still got his reputation and credibility to uphold at this point, and if he can find a way to, and I know this is pretty stretchy at this point, right? But if he can find a way to win the majority of the rest of these games this season, there's still some good games coming up. You got the rivalry game with the Gators at the end of the season as always. Hopefully we can reshuffle some things, obviously, on the coaching side. Maybe Tony White needs to be flopped out for somebody else. But I wouldn't be as devastated as Anthony is about it right now, just because I'm kind of against the way that coaches get dumped. I think that there could be some good that potentially comes out of it. And I don't think he is the worst football coach in the world. Maybe this program is not in his grasp right now, but you reshuffle the cards and you have a good guy like that who I think players could end up buying into. It may end up resolving itself potentially.
I wish I believed that players would buy into him, but we've seen him lose as many teams over the last 2 years as we have seen him win ACC games. He's lost 2 teams. He's lost 2 locker rooms in the last 2 years. So as much as I wish I could agree with you, I don't see a way that happens.
Yeah, I think if I were to pick which side of the argument I'm on, Travis's or Anthony's, I think I'm more on Travis's side. And I gave my opinion like a couple weeks ago on the 12 reasons why I think they should keep Mike Norvell. I still hold firm on that. I still think they should keep him. Kaylin, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say 2 things, really. One, are y'all firing Mike Norvell if Gators beat y'all by 40? Would y'all be like, hey, fire him immediately?
Absolutely. I mean, you're just left with no choice at that point. But yeah, assuming he can win some games, most of the games prior to that, and come in, put up a doggy of a fight, in the Gators game, and hopefully pull away. I don't like jumping the gun on anything ever, and maybe I'm just a little bit on the conservative side with that, but I like Mike Norvell. I think he's a great guy, aside from football, and I think that he still has a lot of things that he can bring to this program if he's able to retain his position.
Yeah. And Trace, really quick, your take on Norvell, and then we'll get into the last segment. How would you, as a Gator fan, view it if they brought Norvell back?
I would say it's just like what we did last year. You kind of know that maybe he's not the answer, but in some way, whether he wins a couple games and finishes strong and buys himself another year, or financially you just can't afford to get rid of him and get the coach that you want. I think that he's not the answer, and it's just if you keep him, it's just like we did for Napier. You keep him another year, and then the season starts off crazy, and you're right back to where you were last year. And what you could have done, today, you put off till later.
And the last segment I want to do is just the predictions for the upcoming games for both teams. So we'll start with you, Trace and Jalen. Gators big rivalry game against Georgia. They will have Billy Gonzalez as the interim coach. I saw something online that Gonzalez wants to turn DJ Lagway loose. It looked to me like he was uncomfortable in that Napier offense, and maybe he just needs a change in scheme. But I'm not saying that's going to happen under Gonzalez, but just for next year, what do you guys predict is going to happen in that game?
You go first, Trace.
For me, I don't expect a close game. I mean, there is kind of the hope that with a new play caller and the defense has been pretty solid all year, maybe they can come out and surprise some people. But I don't know. I mean, for me right now, I don't think that who's taking over the play calling is an expert play caller. I think that it was kind of a situation where a lot of these guys weren't fully qualified to take over and lead a team. None of them have had experience doing it before, but at least the guy who we did give it to is a guy who's been a Gator, committed to the program as long as Urban Meyer's been around. So it could end up being a close game, but if I had to make a prediction, I said we'd lose by 14 to Miami. I think we'd lose by like 21 to Georgia. I'm kind of cash for the season with how things have gone. Maybe they'll come out and surprise, but you kind of set the bar low.
And Jalen, last week you predicted a Gator upset, even if they made the move, and Billy hadn't been fired when we were recording that show that morning. He got fired an hour later. So do you still see Gator upset, or where are you at now with this Georgia game?
I actually do. I think that I'm actually on like what you say with your statement. I think that Lagway is uncomfortable in Billy's offense, and it seems like some of the other receivers and like offense is. So I think that Billy G's going to be able to at least give us some kind of shock value. Georgia, even though the scores kind of tell a different story, they haven't been looking that good. They kind of got out of bed for certain opponents like Tennessee, and then they dropped other games where they could have easily won. They just couldn't take advantage of it. If we can kind of just stop their run, I think that we'll do fine, especially if Billy does actually open up the offense and it can get it to DJ, or it can make DJ get it to Dallas Wilson and everybody else. I think that we're going to be pretty fine. So I do like this with the upset.
Bold
really
prediction. Gators upset Georgia. That would be big news.
Yeah.
Trav and Anthony, Florida State, coming off that one of the worst losses in the Norvell tenure, arguably second worst loss behind Jacksonville State of the Norvell tenure. Rumors of the locker room being broken and not being behind the head coach. How do you see this team rebounding after a bye week? I always think having a bye week after a bad loss is like one of the worst things you can have. As far as you want to be able to get back out there and prove something that following week to put it behind you. But these guys have been lingering in that loss for a while now, and so looking ahead, Florida State has Wake Forest this week, and Wake Forest got a big win against SMU. They beat SMU on a game-winning field goal yesterday. SMU first ACC loss in the Rhett Lashley era yesterday. How do you see the Noles rebounding in this game? It's at home, 7:30 kick. There's probably going to be people booing Norvell. Trav, how do you see the Noles coming out, and what's your prediction for the game as far as who wins and by how much?
Yeah, I think Florida State is going to find a way, man. I mean, we've dropped 3 straight now, right? Or is it 4? 4 straight? Yeah,
4
straight losses. Yeah, I'm a guy that plays the odds, and we're due for a win here. These guys are going to find a way to a little bit of have a little bit of juice for the situation that Norvell's facing right now. The players kind of realize that, and I think quite a few of them have kind of jumped ship. I think it's up to Mike to kind of separate them from who's going to be in that game. I know there was a dispute. I forgot which cornerback it was that they had a little confrontation on the sideline.
Edwin Joseph, yeah.
And I think that if he gets guys on the field that want to fight for him, I think Florida State's going to find a way to win this game. And a lot of it's just going to be because people know what Norvell's facing right now, and it's his job. And that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. We'll pull away by 10 points.
Okay, that'd be quite a rebound. Anthony, Wake. I actually caught a good amount of that game yesterday. Wake Forest looked really good, forcing turnovers, really good defense.
Well coached.
Yeah, well coached, very well coached team. I'm watching that game and I'm like, yeah, I don't see Florida State beating this team based on what I'm seeing on screen. Like those guys played it was a low scoring game, but they played a really good game. How do you see this game playing out? Who wins and by how much?
And isn't that sad that watching Wake Forest as a Florida State fan and saying, damn, I wish we looked like that.
Definitely is.
Like that is emblematic of the erosion of our program that has occurred under Mike Norvell. The fact that we have to wonder if we're going to beat Wake Forest at Doak 7:30 kickoff is an absolute joke. I want us to win. I'm a Florida State fan. I'm an alum. I don't ever want to see us lose, but I think that if we follow trends and we look at what Mike Norvell teams have done when they're given an opportunity to respond and overcome adversity as he preaches, they fail to meet that opportunity time and time again. I think that we're going to lose to Wake Forest at home on homecoming by 2+ scores. And I pray to God that will be the impetus to finally do what needs to be done. But yeah, I don't see it, man. I watched them yesterday too, and I think they beat us by 10+. Honestly, I really, really do.
Yeah, Florida State program and in a bad
We're
spot.
down bad.
The Florida State down bad. Gators had been down bad, but now at least they have hope moving forward. So we'll see if Mike can get the ship turned around, and we'll see what the administration decides to do 4 days before signing day. But boys, thanks for jumping on today, and appreciate you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chris.
Go
Go Noles, baby.
Go Gators.
Later, guys.
Later.